Hey-ho. Howdy guys. So I've got a variation on something that's become a fairly popular build, the autodripper for the Genisis. Basically the idea is instead of wicking liquid up to your wick and relying on there being that constant connection and it keeping up with your vaping needs, well, the autodripper, the concept is instead of pulling it up to your wick periodically, you turn your device upside down, allow it to refill, back up. Now you're ready to vape again for several times. So let's see a real quick look in this, how this one works. And what we're looking at here tonight is a variation named the Beaker build. And I'll see if I can throw a picture up as to why, and you'll understand. So, we've got an eco wool top here, or an eco wool wick with a contact coil and a wire core. So this is stainless steel cable. It's a little tiny wrap, very small. You can actually get away with using just plain wire, and we'll talk about that more. So the Beaker build itself looks like Beaker the muppet. It's got the hair, got a collar, you've got the tie coming down the middle. Each little part does its separate piece here. The idea of the tie, the wire that goes down in the center, that's the only piece that actually pierces the deck into the tank, and it provides a little extra pathway for the liquid and the air to exchange places when you flip it upside down. Let's actually take a look at how it works. I'm going to take another vape off of it here, get a little dryness to the wick. Notice I have the wick hole on top. It's not feeding during this time. And there. I can taste a dry hit starting on that one. Turn it upside down. Already a bubble came up. There goes the big one. We should get another. There we go. Each of those bubbles, full size of that bubble, an equivalent amount of liquid is able to escape back down to this wick. Two big bubbles, and it's pretty much stopped at this point. This one is in tune, is what I call it. Basically, the control from this, and once you have it set in tune, you don't have to touch it again very often at all. Except for during cleanings, and then you want to tune it back in afterwards. The wick, with that solid core in it, works basically like a screw on your coil. So there's a couple things you should be familiar with before you start this kind of a build, and the first one is contact coils. Microcoils is kind of an equivalent term, but there's some terminology debate we won't get into. Call it a compact coil or a contact coil. The compact coil that I've got here happens to be a very large gauge. It's a 24 gauge. It's sitting at 0.4 ohms. This is solidly in the sub-ohms. This is in the lower end of the sub-ohms. And it uses a 1/8 inch drill bit for the production. So you want that inside core to be an 1/8 inch. It's just a little bit over your 3 mil mark. And then you use 3 mil eco wool or ceramic, anything that's got a core in the center. The tie part you end up adding in afterwards, and I'll do a full tear down and rebuild and build a new one here in a new setup. But mind you, low ohms are absolutely not necessary on this build. So I'll give you a little demonstration here. I have a variable volt setup. SVD down here on the bottom, they don't fire until 1.3. So I've got a nice stable 1.3 ohm coil on this guy. Let's see, we'll actually have it display 1.3. And where are we at? We've got this maxed out, so as high as it can go. Once it's warmed up though, and it's back and heated up. So it takes that little bit of a lag, that first hit, but that's a microcoil property oftentimes. Anyways, so this is a 1.3, works on any variable volt out there, same solid build, so you don't have to go sub-ohm. Okay, so let's get into it. How do you build one of these guys? We'll go up close for that. Question is, what are we going to use to end up building this? A drill bit. Drill bit's your best friend when it comes to these guys. Got a screwdriver just in case we need it. A pair of tweezers is the way I prefer to build the contact coil. Kanthal. We need our hair, and we're going to need a tie. We'll need a pair of pliers. Okay, so starting off, we've got an agate here. I happen to come across another one of these. I immediately, a couple minutes with a Dremel, and now they're finger screws instead. So, pretty standard Genesis setup. This goes to the RSST, this goes out to all the high-end Genesis models. This setup is not specific to the AGA. It just happens to be my platform of choice. So, I will be using 26 gauge on this one. It's my favorite wire to build with. It's got a little stiffness to it, some body that you can work with, and it goes within the ohm ranges that I like to travel. Anything around an ohm or below. You can push these above an ohm by all means, but you will end up with quite a bit of coil in the process. So, one thing I did not mention, you will need some kind of a lighter. Kanthal, you don't necessarily need a torch. We do need something to flame off the Kanthal. When you're building a microcoil, it's good to have that little bit stiffer wire, because basically you want these things to stay in place once you put them where they're supposed to be. So, okay. One good glow all the way through should do it on here. Luckily those things cool off real nice and fast. So I'm going to start off by leaving myself a lead sticking up off the end here. We'll end up working that into wherever negative or positive coil we want. I've really got more out of this than I'd like. Alright, so again, little tail sticking out there. You want to clamp it onto that drill bit as tight as you can. Apply a little bit of pressure, not a whole lot, just enough to keep it tense. Wrap up and around and start your first one as close to your fingertips as you can. Next wrap around, we put it right up against that previous one. I'm going to do it again here. We're going to go for, let's say, an 8 wrap on here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3 there, and the bottom was 4. Go up as 5, 6, 7, and one more here, 8. Alright, squeeze just a little bit and let's see how that's coming along. Not too bad. Now, I'm going to take and cut this just below there. Alright, so here is our unfinished coil. Notice it's pretty close there, but not bad. we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds on that side, so this would be a 7, 8. Next step is to compress this a little bit. So the reason I use tweezers for this stage instead of needle nose is because tweezers don't have a whole lot of mass to them. If you use a needle nose like this is going to pull a lot of heat away from your flame, and it's going to waste a lot. It's going to be hard to get that coil up in red. I'm going to start off here. With these tweezers, holding it compressed against. Basically, I'm leaving no space in between. I'm going to run it until it's red. See it there? These tweezers are getting a little warm, so I'm going to set it down. That thing is going to hold some heat, being compact and low gauge. There we go. Cool it off. Okay, now let's take a look at this again after just that one quick treatment. Almost all the way together. Getting real close on it. So basically I'm going to repeat the same thing another time or two. Give it a little squeeze in between. That little tiny gap up top doesn't matter, because here's the secret to a contactor, compact, or a microcoil. It's not about the wires touching each other and relaying electricity. It's about them being close enough to each other to gather and save the heat passed from one to the next. That's why a microcoil, when you burn it, starts in the center. That is the place where you've got the most shared heat. So that's where they light up the first. Okay. In fact, actually having them pressed too hard against each other can end up causing you to have a microcoil that bounces in resistance, or after you start it off and then use it for a little while, it slackens a tiny bit, and because it was pressed so tight together and actually losing some electricity from one round to the other, your resistance grows as you use it. So, okay, so we've got our coil. Next thing we need to do is install it on the base here. Alright, so gotta practice what I preach here. Fire known ohms only. I'll stick it on my SVD. Nice thing about the SVD, even if it can't fire low ohms, it can read them. Let's see what we've got. 1.1, huh? Pardon my guess earlier. Here we go. Mind you, like I said, these are very forgiving. 1.1 I'm more than happy to run with. I wasn't trying to go low ohm, or I'd probably be running in 24 anyways. So, okay. We got a 1.1 ohm. Okay. Let's get her in focus for the burn. See if she does what it should. Boom, right from the center. Right from the center, back down. The center one's the last one left. This will be a beautiful build. Okay, so we've got our coil. Biggest part of the battle's done. Now, talk about making our tie. So, Beaker's tie. We've got Beaker's collar. Let's make some Beaker's tie. I use 20 gauge Canthal. I have it for another 1.2 volt project that I've worked on in the past. Honestly, any type of wire that you don't mind putting in your juice will work. Stainless steel. If you're using stainless steel rope, you're not going to be using the same stuff most people build on. You want something very thin. I've actually got some non-galvanized stainless steel picture framing wire in my usual build here. This is actually the one my wife stole from me because she liked it so much that the hit on it so much that she pretty much will only vape that one now. Okay, the tie. Basically, we do not need it very long. What we need it to do is come up basically to the top of the coil and pierce through to the bottom into the tank. So I'm going to take twice that length and a little bit more and fold it over. Squeeze that down together a little bit. Now, grab the bottom of that, the open end, or rather the loose two-piece end, and clamp them together. And the loop side, stick the screwdriver through. The same sort of a way that you can build twisted canthal for thinner stuff. I'm just going to twist this around until we get a nice even looking set of twists. It'll only go so tight and be comfortable on itself because of the thickness of the wire. Now that and a little bit part that I talked about earlier is going to come into play here. I don't care that the end is a little bit wonky, or the end is a little bit wonky, because I just want to build some nice clear twists through the center. I'm going to take right here at the top, where the last nice even bit is. Take that off. And as gently as I can, we want those not to be too jaggy, not bent out of the way. Same thing on this side. Take and find the last nice even spot. There we go. And that's a good length for the Beaker tie. So we've got a tie. We've got his collar. Now we need Beaker's head, Beaker's hair. .3mm Eco wool. Back to our torch. Eco wool, before you handle it, torch it. The reason for this is it is a braided, soft material. If it's torched, it's stiff. If it's untorched, it's pretty soft and pretty loose, and it's going to unbraid and it's going to puff out, and you're going to get Beaker's hair before you want Beaker's hair. So I'm just going to take it up, basically torch it all over a little bit, and then hold it still until you glow. Once you've got that glow, move on to the next area and just drag the glow with you back out to the end, and there you go. So notice here it's nice and soft. Here it's actually kind of firm. You'll notice when I clip it here it sounds hard. So I'm going to look at about an inch worth of Beaker's hair. Much more, and I find that it blocks the air hole too much. You don't need more than just a puff coming up at the top. I've tried a lot of different lengths. Bam. Okay. So, another thing about Eco wool is it is silica. Silica is sand. Sand flakes, sand falls apart. So does silica, so does ceramic, same thing. Ceramic is just sand. So the way to keep that from happening too much before you want it to, just re-wet it a little bit. Beautiful thing about Eco Wool, decent quality silica and ceramic, is after it's been hardened, once it gets wet again, it gets some of that flex back into it that it needs. Alright, so I'm going to take the Eco Wool with, look at that beautiful clean end, no fraying at all. It's because we cut it while it was still hard. I'm going to take that non-frayed end, push the tie up and into it. You remember, we want that tie to be at least the height of the coil, or right around the height of the coil above the deck. So I shove it in there right now a little bit over halfway. Collar, tie, hair, and this is now the screw. So I'm going to set it down in here. Wire goes right in, and I'm going to look at the wind on my coil. My wind goes down in this direction, and I want to screw this in, so I'm going to screw it in this direction. I'm going to take and pinch my fingers over it to kind of hold that in, and I'm just going to spin it. Something I did not mention or do on this yet. So I like to have just a little bit of clearance on the deck on my coils. The contact coil, you don't have to worry about hot legs and compact. So I give it a little bit of height there. Now, that lets us see our tuning on Beaker as well. So I'm just going to keep twisting. Got to be patient. It's going. This is where the tuning comes in. So you want them to just be into contact with that deck. That way, when the wick is dry and there's air around it, air gets through from in the deck or air chamber into the hole. When the wick is wet and there's liquid around it, it vapor locks the entire top. Now vapor lock, we're going to talk about that a couple different times here. Vapor lock stops the hole from letting liquid through it. That is actually why Beaker has a tie. Beaker's tie makes it an uneven surface instead of just a perfectly round cylinder, and that way air sticks to that wire a little bit and manages to slide up past the liquid, and it doesn't experience vapor lock until at the very top your wick causes a surrounding area around that wire to experience vapor lock. So basically the whole gist of it is here, if you want more liquid, if it's not keeping up, or if it's not filling as fast as you want it to, unscrew it a little bit, pull it up a little bit, let air get in there easier and for longer, and when you turn it upside down, bubbles will happen sooner and they'll stop later. If it's leaking on you, lay it down, leave it there overnight, and you end up with a pool in the morning, tighten it down a little bit. As you press those wicks against that deck, it's going to choke it up some, and you'll have less leaking. And then when you turn it upside down, you usually get bubbles a little bit slower, and they tend to stop a little bit sooner. It's all according to the taste, how you want to tune the device, but once you stick it in there, it's good until the next time that you clean burn it, and then you just turn it upside down, see if it's close to what you're used to it working. Okay, so we just built a Beaker build. a Beaker build auto dripper. That's as clear as I can make it in my explanations. Let's go ahead and get some liquid in this guy. Oh, there went that Banyan. Can't see how much I liked it. And here's our test. Oh, hey. Yeah, guess what? We got big bubbles because we left that out. Helps if you have that screw in. Oh, that's another thing. People used to leave the fill screw out in order to keep a mesh wick managing to keep up. There's no need for this. This is a build that you can tune in to be pretty much drip free, drip proof. Here we go. Got a bubble. Sorry, I'll see if I can get it to where you can see it. And there's a little bubble. We got the negative screw leaking a little air, but that's okay. Any bubble that comes up is liquid going down. That's starting to fill. You can see the bottom is all jelly colored. Well, we'll do zoom in a moment. So this is going a little slower than I like, so I'm going to unscrew it just a tad. Lift those wicks up a little bit. Let me let it fill a little bit again. And it's about time to fire. I will kick back in here after I find the other cap and go up top and give you a view of a couple vapes. Let's give it a little vape. Nice airy draw on this one. Okay guys, that's the gratuitous vaping, and this is the Beaker build. I hope somebody enjoys it as much as I have. Sorry if this went a little long. I will be doing trimming for the first time afterwards, so we'll see how I can patch it all together. Peace.